I'd like to call to order the January 6, 2020 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everybody. Our first order of business is approval of our work session agenda, which you all have copies of that before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no, and that motion passes. I think we got a message from Commissioner Poole that she was not going to be with us tonight. So we will move now to discussion items. First up is a presentation by the Friends of the Mount Pleasant Library, and we have got Emery Ortiz from the library as well as a contingent of other folks. Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon. Thank you. This is really the Friends of the Mount Pleasant Library show, but I did kind of want to reiterate the project since we've all been working on it together. We did a feasibility study that was partially funded by the Friends of the Library and also partially by the county to see whether or not the old Mount Pleasant Middle School cafeteria space could be potentially used as a new Mount Pleasant library. So this report will detail those findings. Amber, why don't you do it? You do it.
I've seen the buck.
Nobody wants the little buttons. I'm Marcia Morris. I'm the president of the Friends of the Mount Pleasant Library, joined by another of our board members, Amber Pope, Martha Dobson, who's our former trustee, Larry Schaefer, who's the architect that we've been working with, and we've got some other folks with us here too to answer any questions you might have. So we're here to give you an update on our plans to expand the Mount Pleasant Library. Just a brief overview of the timeline. We've been on the capital improvement plan since we know at least 2013. We think it's actually a lot further back than that, but we couldn't find a firm date. Beginning in the fall of 2017, the Mount Pleasant Friends started meeting with county staff to discuss options to expand the library, something that we desperately need. In February of 2018, we kicked off some fundraising efforts to go specifically for expansion. In April of 2018, you see we met with the public and with the commissioners. We had a big meeting that we invited people to come to and had a really good turnout, and we thank all the commissioners who came to support us in that endeavor. At the same time, after we kicked off our fundraising in February, you see that we raised $25,000, exceeding our goal within about half a year. By September of 2018, we had met our fundraising goal. In December of that year, we met with the town of Mount Pleasant to discuss land options. We began to realize that it was not really feasible to expand in the site where the library is currently located, so we began looking at other options. That same month, we presented to y'all a summary of our efforts to that, up to that point. We were going to be on the work session agenda for 2019, but the topic was removed, and instead each commissioner was emailed our report. From the fall of 2018 to June 2019, our library consultant was brought in here and discussed library needs throughout the county, including the Mount Pleasant branch. We continued meeting with county staff, and it became increasingly apparent that adding to the current building was not feasible, so we continued to explore other options. In June of 2019, you may recall, we were here and asked the commissioners to apply funds to explore options used at the former Mount Pleasant Middle School site. We split the cost of hiring architect Larry Schaefer to design plans and see what we would begin into. So just to summarize, we have not been able to find space in Mount Pleasant that we could use to build a new library. And it's really not feasible to expand the current site due to expenses, including replacing the roof, replacing the HVAC, and we really don't have any land available to expand. Here you see a summary of the report of Dr. Robert Bergen, who came and studied all the library branches, met with the community, and just kind of showed what is needed. And I know a lot of that's hard to see, but basically what we have in Mount Pleasant is not sufficient for the needs that we have. Here's a quote from his recommendation. This report recommends that the staff of the Cabarrus County Public Library explore constructing a new standalone library facility in Mount Pleasant, or identify an existing facility that can provide the space needed by the library to adequately serve its community over the next 20 years. To adequately support the growing demand for library services over the next 20 years, a new library of at least 11,870 square feet on a new site is recommended for the Mount Pleasant area. Just to give you some perspective, our current branch is 3,771 square feet. During the process of conducting this facility needs assessment, several individuals mentioned the possibility of using part of the old Mount Pleasant Middle School for a library facility. This option may in fact be quite reasonable if it can provide the square footage and parking outlined in Table 8.1 on the following page. In any event, library staff and county and town officials should work together to identify alternative sites for a new Mount Pleasant facility and should keep in mind the need for at least 11,870 square feet to adequately serve the Mount Pleasant area over the next 20 years. So taking Dr. Bergen's recommendations and the support that we got from the community, we began talking very specifically about putting a new library at the site of the old Mount Pleasant Middle School in the space that was once the cafeteria. In our conversations with commissioners and county staff, these two questions have always kind of been at the forefront. Why this project? We know that y'all are met with requests for lots of projects. Everybody's got good ideas for things that we need. And of course ours is one of those, but why this one? And here are some reasons. We could probably give you more, but here are some of the most pressing ones. Again, our current facility is inadequate, and we're in an area with limited resources. We've mentioned to you before that the Mount Pleasant Library has more visits per capita than all the other branches combined. When Dr. Bergen came and did his community meetings, we had by far the highest attendance of any other branch. People care about the library in Mount Pleasant, and they need it to be better. As I said, this project is community-driven and community-supported. All of us are volunteers. And we've brought on a lot of other volunteers from the Mount Pleasant community who care a lot about the library and have helped with fundraising and just raising awareness of the needs for our library. We think that this project will provide maximum benefit to the community by being able to offer things like classes, improved technology access, wellness programs, job-related support, academic support, all kinds of things. It should benefit just about everybody in the eastern Cabarrus County area. The other question is why now? Again, you get lots of good ideas. Why do we have to do this one now? Well, we've already been on the capital improvement plan for years. But right now we have a unique, limited time opportunity to work with a supportive, community-based developer, someone who wants to put a library at this site. Putting the library there will position the library to really serve as a community hub. When y'all approved the sale of the old middle school property, I was there, and I remember everybody talking about how great this could be for the Mount Pleasant community, how this was good that it was going to local people who cared about Mount Pleasant, and that this could really revitalize Mount Pleasant in a lot of ways. And everyone talked about the need to see it serving the community, not just being a business site, but something that can really help everyone out. And finally, this is an opportunity for Cabarrus County to achieve a goal with limited financial impact by working with the developer rather than having to acquire land and y'all go through the building process. This can, I believe, make it more financially tenable for the county. And we can help out in other ways. The current building has an estimated resale value of between $495,000 to $515,000. The Mount Pleasant Friends has over $20,000 in our expansion account, And the county fund has over $4,000 earmarked for architectural expenses. In addition, we've explored other potential sources of funding. You can see there's lots of grant opportunities available to us through the Cannon Foundation, the Ben Minot Foundation, the Golden Leaf Foundation, the State Library of North Carolina. We've had indications from several of these that they will be able to help us fund this project. Finally, we've got some information about the new library site, and you get to see what our money bought us, the plans that Larry and his company have been working on. We've got 25 dedicated parking spaces with additional spaces. The total square feet is 12,112, greater than what the consultant had recommended. In addition, we'll have additional programming space there because of the shared spaces of a gymnasium and an auditorium. Again, the library would be centrally located, and part of the plans for the development allows for the preservation of green space from the original Mount Pleasant Middle School or high school facility. So at this point, unless Martha or Amber need to add anything, I want to turn it over to Larry Schaefer, who's going to kind of walk through the plans for the space with us.
This way?
Forward.
This one.
Yeah.
That one? Okay. All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you the study concept design. This is basic concept design that we did for the library. And and she's going to get it.
Who has control?
I'm not in control. And if you give me the full screen there. Does this have a pointer?
It is.
That right there. This is the,
Will that go full screen?
there we go. And the pointer doesn't work on the screen.
Yeah, I saw it up top.
Pardon?
Put it on the wall behind it and do it.
Yeah, it's red.
There it is.
Yeah.
I
Doesn't
can't
go-
see it once it's
doesn't
on the
go to
screen.
You guys, I'll go up there. So this is the floor plan of the facility. I'm going to go through it because can you hear me now? I know so many of you are familiar with this school site. So to get your bearings, the entry to the school would be about down here. The main lobby, auditorium, gymnasium. This is the cafeteria. This is the old kitchen area. And this portion right here is a really beautiful cafeteria building where you got a lot of great natural light and just the right direction. You remember that site has a nice exposed ceiling. This will be the addition to that cafeteria building to meet the program needs. We're a little bit over in program needs to get everything to fit. The kitchen area is where we have a lot of the supporting spaces in the rooms and the conference rooms and whatnot. But we wanted to reserve the seating stack area where you have a lot of the open high ceiling and nice glass area. The building just really fits it so well for the library. And to really get a good feel for what the developers' intentions are in this site, I'll give you a picture of the overall site. This is a three-dimensional model we did of the overall site. Here is the school. The auditorium, the old existing auditorium is here, a gymnasium here. That line separates the new and the old. And so this portion of it is the old cafeteria building, and this portion of it is the new addition. So it sets in a nice part of the site, especially since right here is that courtyard. A lot of you guys are familiar with. that's in the kind of the interior of the site. So it's a great reading courtyard that's right off of the stacks area. This is dedicated parking for the library, but you see throughout the site, the developer has got ample parking throughout to support all the facilities. This is housing in back, perfect. Got a couple office on the side, and then retail and highway business up front. This is another view, looking at it from the other direction. Give your orientation, auditorium, gymnasium, lobby, the old cafeteria, and the library building. Entrance off the main parking, as well as an entrance here. So there's a walkway that flanks the sides of the building, so you can come at it from multiple locations and feel entrance, but still have the control that that they need for where they go in. It's another view. Again, this is a dedicated parking lot entry, another entry point, and also for the community building, you can enter in from that direction as well. There's off the parking lot. This is the walkway that comes off the gymnasium and the lobby. So this is a walkway that all covered and comes to the entrance as well. And that's all existing. Did a three-dimensional layout of the inside, kind of giving an idea. This is the concept level. My team in Emory will go and refine this even further, but you get an idea of the seating areas, stack areas, the window and the natural light that we'll be able to enjoy utilizing this facility. Again, this is the existing, and that's the new. Another view of the interior. And that's the end of my presentation. Is there any questions?
So you're basically, that would doubling the amount of space, or a little bit less than that?
A little less than double.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a little over 7,000 square feet of it is existing.
Uh-huh.
And so roughly 5,000 of it is new.
Right.
I'm no expert on library design, and this may be a question more for me, but, so what looks like sort of couch, lounge, conversation space, that looks kind of odd in the middle of a library when you're supposed to be quiet, so could you maybe just expand on that a little bit from a design standpoint?
Well, I'll definitely say that libraries are not as quiet as they used to be. And I think, walking around any of our libraries, you find very quickly that they're more communal spaces for all kinds of purposes. So the noise level, I wasn't quite concerned about. As Larry mentioned, there were some things that, if we decide to move in this direction, we would want to tweak a little bit more, and that would be one of mine. But they did do a wonderful job kind of catering the plan to what our consultant had laid out. So they were focused on getting kind of the amount of seats that the consultant had laid out, which I think is a little bit flexible. We could move that around.
Also, what Larry developed here included input from Emory and from Amy Kendrick, the branch manager there. So some of the numbers that the consultant recommended in his report have been adjusted based on what Emory and Amy saw as to better fit the need. So, and location of areas in here, Amy and Emory had a lot of input into where they would like different areas that have different purposes to be located to make the library run smoothly.
Okay, good. Because
And Blake-
that was one of my other questions, was the consultant numbers. I didn't know if those were AIA numbers, American Institute of Architects, if they were Library Association, or just whatever, but it sounds like maybe a combination of several.
And there's a full facilities assessment that Dr. Bergen did as part of his whole strategic planning and consulting package last year. And I can provide that to you, and he goes over his sources for some of that.
So the rooms is that all office space, or what's the use of are those areas?
The room that looks like it's glass windows
Yes.
is a meeting space for programming for children. And the reason for the glass windows is for the safety and
Right.
being able to observe what's going on in there. And the other areas, Larry, I think are work areas for staff and the circulation desk.
Take it to the plan, so this children's program, and so this is your circulation desk, workroom associated with the circulation desk. This is break room, and offices for the support staff is in here. So all that office support functions such right here, right there, and then these are the community functions that need that quiet room.
I wanted to point out, because I was going to say, Blake, when you were asking about where it was quiet, one of the neatest features of this plan is, if you look at the room that has the little wavy divider lines, that can be used as one large room, or it can be broken into like 3 study spaces, and it can be closed off if people need to study or have a meeting. And then the large community room, right now at the Mount Pleasant branch, if you need to get to if the staff needs to get to the break room, they can't go through if there's a meeting, or if kids are having a program or something like that, you can't get to the back, or you can't get out to our storage shed where our stuff is. This allows for programming to happen without messing up everything else going on in the library. So Larry did a really nice job of listening to, he's gone back to the drawing board a couple of times of looking at like, okay, what did the library consultant say? How can we incorporate that? And then the real-time, experiences of Amy working there, and then Emery knowing with her knowledge, kind of putting that in. So I think that when you look at this one, even though it's not the 3D, it gives you more of a sense of just how many needs are met in that space. Because taking it from, our 3,700 square feet to over 12,000 is just, it's pretty mind-blowing for us to think about.
So you meant somebody, I think maybe in the beginning, mentioned about the gym and the library, auditorium space. Who will run that? And I assume you're thinking if you're using that, you'll just book it for things that you need. Is that how that'll work? Or?
That's probably a question for Tom Earnhardt, the developer, but he has indicated to us that those facilities will be available for us to use.
And then the last question I have is, I think it was your presentation again, the piece that had the different square footages for the different areas, that went so quickly. Could I see that again?
Yeah.
Just
From the recommendations,
Yeah,
from the
blue, had
consultant's
the blue somewhere
recommendations.
on it.
And that's directly from the facilities assessment, again, that Dr. Bergen did, so.
And
Yeah, there it is.
that was the information we gave Larry as a starting point. So
Okay.
his initial design was based on those numbers to meet our needs. After that was when Emery and Amy began to give their input on what they thought was most important, what could change, what we need.
That's the column that I was referring to, the square feet required. Of Where does that baseline come from? And it sounds like it came from a couple of different sources.
One of the questions that I have is, and this would be for you, do you think that we really need 3 entrances to this facility? I mean, that's sort of unusual. You got the 2 that you show where the parking is, and then I'm assuming that there's another one coming from the auditorium and the gymnasium. So you've got 3 entrances coming into the library, if I read what you are showing us.
And actually, what we have
See it
set
up at the top up
is
there?
You have one primary entry that the circulation desk can control, but we can, through the exterior, we have access to it from 3 different directions, supporting the overall development. Your primary parking is going to be here. You're going to have available parking on this side as as it was noted, we have access to the community center, which is on this side of the facility, which this is the connection from that lobby that connects the gym and the auditorium. This is that connection, so.
Oh, I see. So it's not actually inside of that lobby area.
Right.
That's what I was thinking. I said, you got the gym and the auditorium, and then in the middle there was another entrance going into this building.
Yeah, so
So it's not that way, it come out to the sidewalk and go in.
Right, and this is all existing covered, so it really works well. In our previous meeting, we had some comments about a little greater control, and with the doors and a little bit more definition in the children's layout area, but just some minor tweaking that in those two areas.
Yeah, I agree. Then if the way you got it laid out with two entrances, it's always much better because the society that we live in today, people coming and going, and a lot more to look at with one more entrance.
Yeah.
So,
I have seen Dr. Bergen's full report previously. It's been a little while, but certainly not to in any way detract from what we're talking about here. But what do you have to say about overall as far as how well the county is meeting the needs of all the branches? Did you have recommendations for other locations as well, or?
You hear a lot from me in terms of facility needs, and there are needs in various parts of the county. I will say, in terms of size, Mount Pleasant is the one that is the most undersized at the moment. Midland, of course, is very small, but that's so new, we're still collecting a lot of data there. And Mount Pleasant, the community is very active in the library, and those needs have been a growing concern since I've been here as library director. But then we also, are discussing a West Cabarrus branch. We're trying to figure out how to meet the needs in Harrisburg and some of the other facilities as well. So, but this is a project that, it is important.
Yeah. So I guess I was just kind of trying to get a feel for how he prioritized, or did he?
He did not. The consultant did
yeah.
not prioritize at all. It was just listing of information and his recommendations
Right.
for every single facility.
Right. I guess I was looking for whether he validated what we already thought. And it sounds like he basically did.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so.
Great.
Well, the thing that I heard that probably emphasized the most of your need is the fact that you currently use a storage shed.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's bursting at the seams.
Well, and anytime they have a public meeting of any sort or a program for children or anything else, there are actually do that in a space where library patrons come into the meeting if they want to obtain books, materials from that area. So it's
Yeah, the teen section is in that room, so you can't get to those books if people are having a program, or you're leaning over their table while they're making their craft, so you can look at the stacks down there, so.
I don't know if this is the right time to be asking this question, but do you have any kind of numbers or anything, what it's gonna cost the county and to get this package put together? I know Tom's here.
Yes, Tom's here, and we were glad he could be here to help address those questions. So, Tom, do you want to sit up here where I am for a minute?
trade out
And
with
you can, okay.
And the reason that I asked that, Mike, is because obviously, we've got a lot going on, as you well know, and Susan will be making a presentation in a little while about the new lobs, where we're gonna be going out for debt service for upwards of $130 million, not to go over that amount. And obviously, that's got a lot of things in it, land, the schools, courthouse, and a lot of different things. But, I'm for one, I'd like to see this come to fruition some way. But the real key to the whole deal, and I think my fellow commissioners, as well as Mike and Susan, will tell you, the affordability of it is gonna be the issue. It's not, I don't know that anybody that says we don't want to do this. But then we got people on the west side that don't have anything. They don't have anything. And that's where the bulk of our population is now. And, but anyway, can you give us some kind of ballpark figure, what we're looking at, you know, to get in this and do something? Make the, you know, get the ball rolling.
Yeah, this is very preliminary, understanding that. I can tell you, we got some numbers from Mr. Schaefer that I thought were quite low based on the climate of building in today's environment. However, understanding that there's other needs in the county and with budgetary constraints, I believe we could structure this thing to where it would be more of a public-private venture, to where we use venture capital to fund the project and then work it through a lease program back to the county. I think that does a couple of things. Number one, it preserves your cash reserves from the county standpoint, but it also gets it, we could probably complete the project a little bit faster than getting in line and, you know, waiting 3 to 5 years for adequate funding for the project. So I think we can come up with a win-win situation. We've sent some preliminary numbers to the county manager's office. Just as a starting point, we've also looked at some of the programming and cost analysis that the county's done previously, and I think, you know, we're certainly in line with that. And again, I think that we can come up with a win-win situation for all parties here.
Yeah, I think Mr. Earnhardt is exactly right. We asked them to look at that opportunity, because the large amount of money up front is tough for us right now. So we asked them that, okay, what if you guys were to build it, lease it back for a certain amount of years, or lease to own, that type thing. So they've done that. We got the numbers, I think, last week. So we're looking at the numbers. Kyle's around here somewhere, but so Kyle and Rodney and Jonathan and I will be looking at that as well. And then, of course, you know, budget season's coming up, so we'll see how they can plug in. It's definitely more palatable that way for us, but it's just a matter of how it fits into the budget and again, the priorities of, like Commissioner Shu said, which comes first. And that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's going to be up to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I wanted, you know, with all full transparency, because that's what we want, full transparency. And Mike, you know, we just did the Midland Library. Well, Emory, well, wherever she went, she knows, we just did that, opened it last year. But Midland, you know, they leased that building. They didn't lease it to the county. They leased it. We just outfitted it and put the personnel in there. And see, that comes into play as well. Mike, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, exactly. The town and the Friends built the original library. Yeah. Yes, and that's when the value of that building could definitely, with a sale, could go towards this as well. And that's just it. They built the first one, so the policy has been the town would be responsible for building the building, and then the county would take care of the inside and the operations. There has not been any policy of what happens on the second go-around. So that's going to be yeah, something that this board will have to discuss and make a decision on. But yeah, so, and I think these ladies have done a tremendous job. They've been, they had their mind on the goal, and they kept on it, and they've done a good job. They brought you a good product. Again, it's going to come back to the priorities and how it fits into the budget this year or next year or whatever year that is. So, but as Emory said, Midland has not been open very long, and it already needs to be enlarged. Harrisburg could probably be doubled. Mount Pleasant could be doubled. And then we've got the western side of the county that doesn't have any of those services yet. So it's a matter of how you guys want to prioritize that, and how we can also, how can we pay for it, so.
Well, the good thing is that you've already got a building there that obviously has a substantial value to it. And if that could somehow come into play
Yeah, it will.
as what you've got
That's
figured.
part of the formula.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But then the next thing is, it's been on the CIP for quite some time. What would be the timetable? Obviously, yesterday probably wouldn't be fast enough. But, obviously, we got to be reasonable, with your organization, Tom, doing the development and all of that. You'd probably have a little bit better handle on, what kind of time frame. We're looking at 18 months, we're looking at a year, 2 years before a facility could be available.
I would respond to that by 6 to 9 months from date of permitted drawings. Understanding it takes time to get through the approval processes and so forth. So if you say 6 months for project approval, and then 2 or 3 months of plan review, then from that point, we can build it in 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, I guess the other question is, that's the quickest. How, well, let's say if we come back to you and say, well, we don't have the money to do this, but we might have the money next year. What's your situation in the overall planning process for that project? How far into it? I mean, what's your flexibility there, I guess is my question.
Well, we're community partners, so this is a give and take, and we understand that. And, we have a vested interest in the Mount Pleasant area, and I think you guys know us as developers. We have a special heart for that area. Keep in mind that a lot of those patrons that you're serving in eastern Cabarrus County is people that's been there for a long, long time. And all the growth is coming in in the western part of the county, but these people that's just lived here for 3 months, 6 months. So I would invite you to remember that when it's time to prioritize things. And just because the growth is here, we need to think about the people that's been here and paid taxes for 20, 40, and 50 years.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm hearing you say is there's some flexibility on the timeline.
We can work with that. We wouldn't want to drag it out forever. We would like to see movement at the county level, but as long as we're seeing, positive signs, then, we can certainly work with you on the timeline for that matter. And I understand the budgetary process, and, it's coming up in July, I believe, so you'll be doing your planning sessions here in the next few months. And as long as we're seeing positive movement in that area, then, we'll be fine with that.
Do you anticipate at present that this would be the first project on that property, or do you have other things that will be beginning
No,
prior
we've
to
already
that?
started the renovations. As you guys remember, you were scared of that project and was going to dump lots of money into it. That's why you sold it. But we've already put a new roof on the auditorium. We're in the process of replacing all the HVAC systems for the auditorium, the lobby, and the old gymnasium. And so the 3 components that's touching this is already under renovations, and then this would be the last piece of that, would be the cafeteria. And then all those structures will be totally renovated and accessible for the community. And that's what we were hoping to see. We've been in touch with the Cabarrus Arts Council and the CVB, and they have interest in bringing some tournaments in there and so forth. So we really see this thing becoming the flavor of a community center. And I think we've got the leases, we've got a church that's using the auditorium in there now. But we have the lease structured that we can use it for other venues.
Right.
So if we want to bring in a music venue, or the Cabarrus Arts Council has a musician they want to bring in, or some act, we can do that. So there's lots of flexibility there.
Speaking of it being used as a venue, would you tell us the seating of the auditorium, so we have an idea of the number of seats
It's in the
available?
500 range.
About 500.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mr. Arnott, the payment plan or the lease plan that we're looking at, is the gymnasium and the auditorium, is that built into that number that you gave us to be able to use, or is that additional
Yeah.
cost?
Well, we need to know, without having more information, we need to know, kind of what the requirements for the library folks would need. So that's not necessarily factored in it, but if it's a minimum amount, then it
Right.
probably would change those numbers.
And Mr. Shu, and I just want to state for everybody and who's here and listening later, the county does own the current library building. So with the sale of that, that would help offset expenses to the county.
Okay, other questions? We've got a lot to think about and study about. Thank you for all your efforts. All of you have been extremely diligent, as was pointed out earlier, and we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. And let me put in a quick plug for February 29th, the Friends of the Library Annual Play, and you can see Commissioner Morris in that one this year.
I'm sure that'll be a huge fundraiser.
Huge! Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the Arena and Event Center contract review. I think Jonathan's going to lead us in that with some others.
Yeah. You
Actually,
gonna-
Mr. Downs
I was going
is
to say, are
gonna
you going to start,
Mr.
or am I going to
Downs.
start? Well, it's, we are reaching the end of the current contract, or the first 5 years of the current contract, with an option to extend for an additional 5 years. And we have talked with Mr. Robinson, who is the general manager there, as well as the staff, with SMG, who is now
ASM Global.
ASM Global, and talked about, in the current contract, you as the board need to give them some kind of a direction by the end of this month as to whether we want to continue with an additional 5 years, or do we want to continue with more than 5 years, either 5 years and extend it into some more options, or do we want to discontinue our relationship? And Mr. Marshall and myself and Mr. Robinson met today and talked more about this, and Ms. Barrington is here as well to go over some of the financials, just to give you a background on how it's performed from a financial perspective, from an operational perspective, but then also and the most important, how is it performed as a community entity or facility. And so with that, we are looking at a couple, then again, you have those three options that I just explained, but we do need to let SMG know. And so to start off the conversation, if we'll let Ms. Farrington talk about, you have this chart, this spreadsheet in front of you, to talk about how it's been funded over the last several years, how it's performed, and where we are at currently as well.
So the colorful spreadsheet here is a history from 2003 on through 2019. And within our funding, we have what we call a Cabarrus Arena and Events Fund, which also includes the fair. So you'll see some fair numbers in there. And also we have an area where we call visitor-related events, where we can collect money for different events that may happen in the future. So through the years, sometimes we were actually supplementing the arena with the fair, and we got that all corrected last year. So you'll see an adjustment in 2018. So if we want to go to the final column on the spreadsheet, 2019, so you get a true year there. We had, if you'll notice at the top, the fair, actually, if you remember, we closed several days, so that one has a negative event, a deduction in their fund balance of $72,000. But the arena portion actually had a profit of $385,000. Now, you wonder how that happens, but we also have contributions from our CVB that goes into that fund. So each year, what we do is we take the arena's profit and loss statement, and we consider what we've given them during the year, and we true it up. So that happens every year. So this $385,000 actually is coming from revenues from CVB. At the very bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll have the cumulative fund balances for different areas. So it shows 1.2 million for the fair, 385,000 for the arena, and then 199,269 for our visitor event, related events for future. So during the years, we knew, like we said, when we first started the arena, that it was not going to turn a profit. We knew that we'd have to supplement each year, and we have been supplementing the arena, and we anticipate each year and put that into our general fund budget, and we transfer money over to this fund to cover that each year. So we do that, and we also pay incentives based on their performances, and I think we take that to you usually in November or December. We'll come back to you, and we'll pay incentives on their operations and their food and beverages, how they're doing there. So just to sort of give you an idea of the contributions, we usually, for example, in 2019, we gave them a contribution of $832,000. You don't rarely see that on this piece of paper. That's made up of the incentives and the general operating transfer to the fund. So, but through the years, I looked at it, and there was an average of $658,000 for 15 years worth of contributions back to the arena. So it's actually $658,193 is an average for the 15 years that we've been providing that contribution to their operations.
Great. So, as Ms. Barrington said, the county does. The operations part of the arena, it does not make a profit each year, so we do subsidize it. However, I'm going to let Mr. Robinson talk to you about other things that they do to make it a community facility, and how they work with the nonprofits and how they work with the others at a value, and reduced cost for some of those areas as well, at a value that almost levels that out. So, yep.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of ASM Global, formerly known as SMG, for the opportunity to manage Cabarrus Arena and Event Center for soon to be 15 years now, and we look forward to continuing that relationship. As I talk to my peers within the company, every one of them, when I talk about our relationship with Cabarrus County, can't believe how good a working relationship it is. We've got something really good here, and something that we should all be proud of. Ms. Farrington mentioned some of the financial components. The three goals in the management contract that we've operated under for the last 5 years are the same three goals that we started 15 years ago, and those are to decrease the subsidy, which we've had some success with, to improve the quality of events at Cabarrus Arena and Event Center, and if folks that have been around long enough to remember when the venue first opened, we had about 200 event days a year. 50 of those were church services. The rest were just about any event we could find that wanted to pay rent to host their event. And now we're in the fortunate position of hosting 300 different events a year. This past year was not quite as strong because we didn't have dates available for concerts for national acts, but some more of those will be coming through in the next year, similar to what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. So just on entertainment, the quality of events have definitely improved. We host local professional wrestling promotions, but also things like WWE, Ring of Honor, potentially one more in the future. The consumer shows, the trade shows, the educational shows we do have all improved. Our home show that we hosted for 15 years was recently purchased by the leading consumer show promoter, leading in terms of number of events they own in North America. Ours is one of the shows purchased by that company. This will be their first show the end of this month. And in 2 or 3 years' time, I think you'll be astounded at the level that show grows to become. Outside of the decreased subsidy and the improvement in quality of the events, one of the other goals is to increase the number of events. I mentioned 15 years ago, we had 200 event days, 50 of those were church services. This past year, we achieved for the first time ever 401 event days. So we're double where we were 15 years ago. The majority of that growth has come in the last 4 years. We don't see any reason for that not to continue. But some of the things that are not spelled out specifically in the management agreement are definitely to grow revenue. We look back 15 years ago, gross revenue coming through the facility was $1.4 million. Last year it was $2.4 million. So we've definitely gained some ground on that. And along with the number of events and gross revenue at the facility, we've attracted more visitors. We're about 220,000 10 years ago, just shy 290-some thousand this past year. And with that number of folks coming to the venue, they're not just coming to Cabarrus Arena and going back home. They're stopping at the gas station, at a restaurant, maybe by a store, and spending money that helps with sales tax revenue and potentially some hotel tax revenue that contributes to the standard of living in the community. Some of the other things we've done is we've opened venue access to governmental groups, charitable groups, other groups in the community, so they can have a place to do their programs, whether it's to hold a meeting, to hold a fundraiser. And the scale of that has changed tremendously in the last 4 or 5 years. In the last 5 years, we've seen about $3 million in-kind contributions, fee discounts essentially, that we've been able to give to those groups, and $780,000 of that was in the last year. This year is probably going to be more than that. Those are some of the things that we do to be community partners, to contribute to the quality of life here in Cabarrus County. Some of the other things we do are offer fundraising opportunities. We have about 20 groups that some are associated with school systems, some are with churches, some are with private organizations as fundraising opportunities. So about, depending on the year, between $50,000 and $75,000 a year, $75,000 each year, we're able to make in contributions to those groups for work they do at the arena, largely in the form of working in concession stands, providing an alternate labor source for the things we do. In the course of that program, we're at about $750,000 that we've been able to get out into the community for these groups to use for the work they do. And something else, it doesn't have a tremendous financial impact, but it's definitely a sense of pride in doing what's right in the community. Fully 10% of our workforce has self-identified as having some sort of disability. And in addition to that, we've had a long relationship with a few groups here that bring students, high school students that are in a program that have some challenges to learn how it is to work, what it takes to come to work, to wear a uniform, to do what it is you're supposed to do that way, so that when they graduate from high school, they're able to enter the community and find some sort of employment. And also, we have some other groups we work with that bring students in, bring grown people in, and use us as a training place, again, to learn what it takes to show up to work on time, to do your job, to do it in as professional way as you can, and be proud of what you do to help them in their lives. So there's definitely a financial component to what we do, but the source of community pride, of contributing to the quality of life, is something that I think we've done a good job with. I think we can do much more with in the future. But with that, I'll close with saying thank you for the last 15 years, and look forward to the chance of continuing that for another 5, 10, 15 years.
Questions for Kenny?
No questions for Kenny. Kenny doing a good job down there. Question for Susan, though. I might have hit on this one time before in the past, and that is, this was obviously done in 2003. More than likely, it was 20-year financing. So are we nearing the end of the debt service on this?
Yes.
Okay? And then, if we are, which we should be, 23, maybe? All right?
22.
It's 22.
22.
22.
Say, I know you guys keep an eye on that.
February 1st, 2022.
But how will that reflect on the bids? So we can have a better idea. Hypothetically, we got 300,000 going out for debt service, and we've got subsidy of 800,000. Does that mean our net is 500,000?
The debt service is not on the spreadsheet.
Okay,
Our debt, all of our debt is in our general fund. We budget for our debt service in our general fund and pay for it out of those pots of money. You know, we talked to you earlier, a couple months ago, about our community investment fund.
right.
Well, all that debt's gonna be taken out of there and put into a special fund, and you'll be able to track it, well, probably a little bit better than we're doing now in that fund. So, this, like any other debt, if you, this particular debt, we issued actually, it was called COPS 2002. And it was the same time we built the 5 auxiliary gyms and the Cabarrus Arena.
I remember all that.
And I believe it was the school administration building too, all at the same time. So it is coming off our debts. We're excited about that, so.
Well, that's good then. And that's all will be, and Rodney talked about this a few months ago, about building our capacity.
Yes,
So that'll help build the capacity as well, because this is coming off.
yes, that
But
gets
it
built in
won't
our
have any
model.
reflection as far as the balance sheet here.
No.
Okay. That's all I had.
Other questions? One that you mentioned about the amount of money that basically fee discounts that are offered to a lot of groups, and so some of the events that occur out there, for example, the troop deployment that was a month or two ago that Commissioner Shue and I were at, do they pay for the use of the facility or at a discounted rate, or is that a donation? I know there's a lot of that goes on too.
There are very few straight donations
Right.
of time and resources. Most of them, and it depends on the organization. Are they a true charity versus a nonprofit or a governmental organization or what have you? We have different rate structures for those that are definitely different than for-profit enterprises. Outside of those few exceptions, and the military deployment exercise was one of them, we look to break even on.
Right.
No more, no less. We have the building, the equipment is there. We essentially look for those groups to pay out-of-pocket cost, labor, utility bill, a minor part for just routine wear and tear on the venue.
Right. So, bottom line, it really is a donation.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, then you look at all the high school graduations for Cabarrus County schools.
Union
Rowan,
County schools.
Cabarrus Community College.
We've got 3 Union County schools that come up to graduate with us.
Right. And so, I mean, and of course, that's a taxpayer expense as well. But basically, I'm guessing most of those are that same.
They are.
Break even. And having participated in a lot of those, you know, you have the opportunity to see there's a lot of staff on the payroll out there helping to make those things happen. And I imagine it's no inexpensive item to fire up the air conditioning in that facility. I mean, so there's a lot of expense involved, even if it's a break even.
There is, you mentioned air conditioning. It costs about $1,300 a day to heat and cool just the arena and the event center itself.
Right.
So it's an expensive venue to operate without events taking place. When you add events there, that overhead cost goes down. There's a certain heating and cooling expense if no one's in the building, and then when you add folks, it goes up. But as we've seen over time, the net income, the deficit for operating the venue has not corrected for inflation. You look back 15 years ago, things may have been 25, 30% cheaper than they are now. The operating deficit has gone down, not comparing for the time value of money, real dollars has gone down in what it takes to operate that venue in the last 15 years.
Yeah, and I guess that was one of the points that I was trying to make, was that is a benefit to the community. It's a benefit to the school system. It's a bit, to name all these other things. It wasn't designed to be a profit-making entity, but it provides these services to people, the county, and I imagine if you sat down and came up with the complete list, it's probably broader than most of us realize.
It absolutely is, and the benefits that the venue brings to the community are, we do our fair share of educational programs and commercial businesses, consumer shows, some entertainment, and what we've seen over the last several years is what the community wants has changed, and we've tried to match what the community says they want. Now, we have some legacy events that will run their course and be replaced with new events, and some of those will be things that are not in our current programming that are missing, that we would like to establish, and I think there'll be things that reflect the nature of this community more so.
Well, and I guess another question that I would have is, how much money do we need to spend to correct some of the problem areas that you might have? Most specifically, one that I can think of is the ingress and egress issues and traffic. I think one of the recent events I was out there, it took me about 45 to 50 minutes to get out of the parking lot.
Yep.
Which didn't bother me, but thinking about our customers, I thought, they probably weren't as happy as they could be. Of course, this was an event where everybody was leaving at the same
Sure.
time. I know that I've been out there for the Christmas shows and those kind of things, and I'm just absolutely amazed at the number of people and the number of cars, but they're leaving at different times.
You must have been at the tail end of the line, because at a capacity arena, somewhere around 4,500 people, about 45 minutes is what it takes, because we only have really 3 exits, and every one of them go to the same place. They're going to Highway 49 one way or another, even coming out either the main entrance or the back entrance. If you turn them toward Concord on Old Airport Road, the vast majority of folks will go a half mile down the road, make a U-turn, and come right back through the congestion to get to 49.
Right.
It happens. It happens.
And you could just go another half mile and turn left on Hagler.
And you're there.
You go right out there.
So a traffic light at that intersection of Old Airport Road and Highway 49 would solve a lot of problems. Some of the larger events, we have to put deputies out there to stop traffic, to facilitate traffic flow. Some of the bigger events, high school graduations, a close to sold-out concert. Folks that have been around a while that remember where the Buffalo Ranch was on Highway 49. That's about where traffic stops on your way in, about a mile down the road. It takes about an hour and a half to get folks in. Again, there's only one way to get them in and out. So that's definitely a traffic light there is one way. If some plans that have been announced publicly ever come to fruition about hotels and mixed-use developments adjacent to the venue, does 2 things for us. One, it changes what we do programmatically. We go from a venue that primarily hosts bigger, more popular events on the weekends and fill in during the week with smaller business meetings and so forth, to a place that can attract different weekend events, because we have a hotel, could potentially have a hotel right beside of us, but that hotel pays dividends during the week. Then we become a small convention center,
Right.
instead of folks having to go you know, 10, 12 miles away to get to the nearest hotel or hotels. That's the key opportunity for us going forward, and I don't know how much local government can influence any of those, but those are the two things that could help us the most with what we do now and what we see in the next 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Yeah. So to just.
Well, I was just, Mr. Chairman, under the guise of discussing the current contract, which I think was the subject of the presentation, I would leave it up to the county manager and his staff on the nuances of the deal, and not getting the nuts and bolts. From 50,000 feet of whether the current group is doing the proper job in maintaining and running the arena, I certainly think so from my perspective and the events that I've attended and been out there. It seems to be very well run. You must have great patience waiting 45 minutes to say it didn't bother you. My hat's off to you. But that doesn't have anything to do with these guys, you know.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's my
Yes.
point. What do we
Inside-
need to do?
Right, inside the facility, if it's a question of whether we really need to go shop and try to find somebody better, it seems like that would be hard to do. If whatever the nuances of the actual deal and the way it's structured, I would be willing to listen to you guys and take your recommendation. But as far as our conversation here today, I think these guys do an admirable job of running that center for us. I have always maintained and thought, again, at 50,000 feet, why can't we make money? Why is this a losing proposition? Because that, on the surface of it, that doesn't make any sense. You get down to some of the things that we were just talking about, and then, okay, so as a community center, and it's something that we're doing to try to benefit the most people in the county, well, there again, there's some nuance to that as well that you've discussed, and I think that's where we are, and we've sort of accepted it. I think the fact that we are trying every year to look at different things and figure out a way to keep the number as small as possible that you need from us, I think that's absolutely the direction you have to go. Because if we ever lose that, then we're out in no man's land. But to lock the doors and shut it down is going to cost us a heck of a lot more money than what we're talking about trying to help them keep it going, to just keep the gap small. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the other thing, just wanted to mention too, is, and it's not any, that impacts their ability to sell too, is the fair. The fair is totally separate. It used to be the week before and the week of. Now it's probably getting close to 2 weeks before and 1 week afterwards that they can't sell the building. They get no revenues or pay no expenses on the fair, but they also can't sell the building because the fairgrounds are full, the buildings are full, and then it takes a good week to get cleaned up after the fair as well. So that's another obstacle that they've got to get around as well.
And Blake, to your point, about the facility, this and that and all, but when you look at what it cost us to open and operate the parks, which is a quality of life thing, and when you compare what we spend on parks and how many people it touches to this, it's really a pretty good bargain, in my opinion. And like Commissioner Morris said, I don't think it was ever intended to be, where we just, we make a profit off of it. It's a community place for a quality of life for our citizens, and there's a price to that. Just like the parks or the senior centers or the libraries, it's something for the citizens of the county, and they all have costs, and this is no different. So I'm pleased with, with what's going on out there, and I'm with Blake, as far as working out the deal, all that. I've got enough confidence in our staff that they can continue what we're doing and make the necessary changes, if anything, and move forward 5 more years minimum.
Yeah. Well, I think if you, and I certainly feel the same way, and I feel very comfortable in going forward with what staff recommends. If you look back at the history of this, they have tried a number of different approaches to this. Some that didn't work out so well, and some that did work out well, and so they've got that historical knowledge that maybe all of us don't have as well. So, you know, I think that's certainly the right approach. And I see Commissioner Honeycutt shaking her head yes, so it sounds like we have consensus.
Great.
Very good. We thank you very much. Okay, we move now to our Innovation and Technology Report, and we're happy to have Todd Chanley and Joe Battinelli for that presentation. I don't think I'm supposed to ask you anything about where Debbie Brannon is and
Not today.
why
Not
she's
today.
dinted up and so forth.
Yes.
But
We wish her a speedy recovery. Thank you. I do have Landon Patterson also with me tonight. We're here tonight to tell you a little bit about some innovation that we've been working on for a couple months that everyone will be very excited about. And it's the upgrade to our new GIS website. We run that platform on Esri's software, which we have been using since the mid-'80s. We have used that software all the way back on the mainframe. So that's a feat that we were customer 197 back in the day, and they now have over 300,000 customers. So when I joined the team in the 90s, we implemented one of the first GISs on the web in 98. We were one of the first counties in the nation to put this out there. The team has worked very hard on putting this together. I'm going to not steal any of their thunder and tell you anything about it, so let you go ahead and start, Joe.
All right. Thank you for having us here today. We have our GIS website is one of the most visited sites on cabarruscounty.us. I pulled our stats for the last 3 years. We've had about 1.1 million visits to. We have two main web applications. We have the My Cabarrus GIS, and we have the GIS Data Explorer. They have different features, and we'll go through them. But Landon has been working really, really hard in putting together this new site using a very, very simplified back-end structure. So Esri lets you do all these crazy, awesome maps that you can pull in all these different components to have. And we're using a special library that lets us just use just what we need so that it loads fast on your phone, it loads fast on your desktop, and you do your searches and get your data. We put out a beta site right before the holidays and sent it out to about 70 community partners, including realtors, engineers, architects, state and local government employees. And we got some feedback on different things they wanted to see, and we worked on those, and we're working through those. So we have the new site, which we're gonna demo for you today, and it's not this is the site, and then it's done. We're working on an agile development, so we're working towards, as we come across new things that we can add, we will add them to the site. It is not a static thing. When I came in 2014, 5 years ago, it was late 2014, we had the same sites that we have now. And they've been admirable in the fact that they're still running. We've done a lot of Band-Aids, let's say. And so these are our sites, My Cabarrus GIS and GIS Data Explorer. You might be familiar with them if you've linked into our Clara system to look up property and then clicked on the map, you've ended up in My Cabarrus GIS. Has very easy search, it's more mobile friendly than GIS Data Explorer. meaning it's better on your phone. We have the GIS Data Explorer. It's more of a full-fledged desktop. It has a lot of layers. You can see all our imagery going back to 1938. The farmers in the county are very excited because they've always used the measure tools. I've gotten a lot of calls about that. Where are they? How can I get them? And so when we foresaw the project to move forward, we wanted to make this all into one application. So we had one thing going forward. Now, yes, these sites, you might have used them yourselves. They work currently. In another month, we're going to have to shut down those servers that they're running on. They do not run on the new servers. They're pieced together from several different applications that all work together. And if any one of those things goes wrong, usually me and Landon are working. We're getting a lot of calls from the public, and we're working on it, including stuff as simple as printing. That was a separate web application that we had to hit that would then call back the print, the PDF that you would get. And we really kind of went in a new direction here so that it could all just work. So without further ado.
All right. Well, so the interface for this application, we tried to make it as simple and clean as we could and eliminate things that would obscure the map, and then also maybe make things a little more cumbersome to use. So the map itself right now has, on the left-hand side, has all of your navigation. So you have your zoom tools. You can locate yourself on the map. You can search for addresses or owners or PIN numbers. And then you can also print on that side as well. On the right side of the app, you have the ability to click on a button, and then a pane will open up, and I'll show you that in a little bit, and you can get to all of the data, as well as you have your measure tool there that Joe had mentioned that a lot of our users do end up using. So it's very quick. As you can see, I'm going to go ahead and demo that search feature there for you. So just looking up this building, it's going to zoom and pull back all of that data that a user might expect to find. A lot of these data fields are the same as the My Cabarrus GIS site. So you'll have your environmental data, you'll have your property data. All of that is right there in that pane, and the user can go through and look at that to their heart's content and click on additional areas of the map to also pull back data on those properties as well. As Joe mentioned, we do have the print functionality, and the direction we took with the print functionality was to eliminate the dependencies that we had before that would normally cause a lot of issues, a lot of breakages. It was very brittle for us. So we eliminated those dependencies by adding a little bit more code, but in the long run, it'll be better for our end users. So you can click the print button, you can get your PDF that you would expect, the full map, and then also all of your data underneath. It also has the ability for you to draw the area that you want to print. So you're not just zooming in on an area and printing it. You can also take a box and draw an area and print that whole area. And maybe your property's in the center with the data, and it'll pull that back for you. And this is the measure tool. So this will allow you to obviously measure anything that's on the map, any of our features that we have, anything on the map. And it's going to return a few different types of data for you. It'll return the length of the line around the property if you're drawing a polygon there. It'll give you the square footage, quite a few other different measures as well. And you can do multiple measures on the map. So you see I drew one rectangle or one property line there, but you could have 5 or 6 measures on the map itself and click back and forth and look at those and do comparison and things like that. So it's a very nice tool there. Right. And we also have the ability for users to locate themselves. So say they're standing at a property and they want to know more about it, they can hit the locate tool. It'll pull them down to that property without them having to do a ton of searching. They can click the map and then get all of the data on that property as well returned to them. right there on their mobile device. And the final portion is the Data Explorer portion. So this is the section that would replace our Data Explorer application, whole separate application can be replaced right here. So I have all of the aerials, as we said, going back to the 30s, all the way up to the present aerial that we have, which is 2019, and all of our layers that you would normally expect to be on the map. So our address numbers, pin labels, cell towers, fire stations, all of those, quite a few layers. And so all of our applications are now combined into one, and there's one source for Cabarrus County GIS.
Can we ask a quick question before you leave that
Yes.
screen? And I don't mean to derail you, but.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you click on zoning.
Mm-hmm. You want me to pull it up on the?
Yes, please.
Okay. Give me 1 second here.
Oh.
So we did that as a video to make sure that we didn't have any glitches
okay, well
tonight.
then,
So, but we can do a
well,
live
that's
demo.
okay. We don't need to do a live. My question was going to be, because I use GIS mapping from other counties in 2 states, and one of the things that I'm curious about is sometimes it will show you what, sometimes it's hard to find, and then sometimes it'll show you what the zoning classification is. But if Charleston County may have something different than what we have, and whatever they have listed, I've got to then go back somewhere else to try to figure out what the definition of that classification is. I was just curious, if you click on it, does it give you that, or is that something you still have to go find?
So right now, it just has the label for the zoning, but that is definitely something that we can add to the application, and that's the ideas that we really want to have. So that would be a great thing to add. We don't have it now, but we
Okay.
can.
Well, again, don't need a live demonstration. I just
Sure.
thought I'd ask before you left that screen and didn't realize it
We'll
was.
send you an email.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's the great feedback that the team has received from many of the folks out in the public to get that information back, because that is something we would take for granted, that everyone would know what AO means in Cabarrus County. All right. So I think Joe touched on a little bit. I think change is difficult for a lot of folks, and we're gonna expect that feedback as well, that we are changing the website. We have received that feedback of, oh, please don't change it. We know where it is. We know how to use it now. But because Microsoft is ending support for the servers that we do currently run this on, it is time. So it is a matter of security and function for us that they do have to go away. So the team has worked hard to meet that deadline, and I appreciate them working through the holidays to make sure this happened in time. So I don't know if you guys had any more questions, or we can do a live demo, so if there's other things, but just to make sure that it flowed well in interest of time, we wanted to make sure those videos were helpful.
Feedback, the measuring feature, that's incredible. I've not seen that before. But I mean, again, my own selfish prism of what I have to do. I've got to measure parking lots and roof structures sometimes.
Yeah,
So
impervious surface,
that's, I've not seen that on a GIS from a county standpoint. So that's a tremendous feature.
And I think it's what the team has worked on, is try to take true GIS tools and put them in the end users' hands. And that's these guys and Esri being able to take those tools and produce them in a format that's usable by the public now. So we're very excited about it, because oftentimes it's hard for us to look at it and go, well, why do we still need a GIS site? Everybody has Google Maps. But there's so much more data that we can provide and produce for the public that, every time it goes down, these guys are heroes. They get the emails and the bells start ringing when we do have a small problem and it's down for a few minutes even.
And when will the new site be live?
Next week, sir.
Yeah.
That is the plan for, support ends on the 14th. So our plan is to put the new site up this week, and then the old site would retire next week.
Excellent. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It sounds exciting. Okay, we move now to discussion items for action at our regular meeting on the 21st. First item is 4.1, which is appointments to boards and committees. And you all have copies of that before you. And I think I've got some additional detail earlier, does anybody have any questions or concerns about any of those? Okay, then we will move to item 4.2. This is a revised joint use agreement, and I think Jonathan's going to lead us in that discussion.
So we already have a joint use agreement in place between Cabarrus County and Cabarrus County Schools for use of fields and with our parks and our active living and parks department. With the synthetic turf project, it needs to be revised, and I think we've talked about this a little bit. So Mr. Cook has started those revisions with comments from both the Convention and Visitors Bureau as well as Cabarrus County Schools. We're continuing to work through those. We should have a completed draft for you at your regular meeting. This is to introduce it. So if you, and there is a draft attached. So if you have any questions on what's there, but it is the same format as we've had before. It does add the CVB as a party, and it allows now that use of those synthetic turf fields when they're completed, and the scheduling of that. And then what we've really gone back and forth on here lately is more about who supplies what equipment, simple things like stocking bathrooms even, and who supplies, whether it's a football tournament or a soccer tournament, who's supplying those materials. And we, of course, have to work through some of those other issues with damage and insurance and all the things that go along with that.
Okay, questions or comments for Jonathan? I'm sure we will hear more about it. So Jonathan has the next item, which is road improvements at Hickory Ridge Elementary School.
I'm going to get my school dream team to come up here.
That's a very flattering thing for you to say.
So as you're aware, we've been continuing.
Wait, is Tim not on the dream team?
I guess he's not.
We moved up in the world.
Drawing straws to see who gets to come up here.
I should have brought Kelly up. She's on the dream team for the joint use agreement too.
Oh, I am moving up in the world.
As you're aware, we're still, and we, meaning mostly the schools, have been working with the town of Harrisburg in one case and the city of Concord in another, DOT in both cases, on the road improvements at Hickory Ridge Elementary School and West Cabarrus High School. This particular item is about Hickory Ridge Elementary School. I wanted them to update you. We do need to move some money around within the construction budget in order to move forward with design on the I think revised and decided upon design for this. I want them to go both through what some of those revisions are and then kind of the process of that.
You want me to start? So, yeah, so as a part of this, we've been back and forth with NCDOT, Congestion Management, MSTA as to what the end result of the roundabout road improvements were going to entail. We started at a 120-foot roundabout. We got pricing back from that. It exceeded what we had in the budget. We submitted that to MSTA and Congestion Management, who are the responsible parties for the reimbursement for this work. It was brought to our attention at that time that was probably more than they had earmarked to reimburse for these improvements. So they came back and, again, it was evolving as these conversations were taking place, and it evolved to a lesser roundabout to helpfully reduce the cost of the road improvements. So we are currently sitting at a design of a 60-foot roundabout. It's, again, still a roundabout in nature, but just smaller in the overall diameter, which again will reduce the cost. But as a part of that, the design that we have that the TIA from the town of Harrisburg had said we needed to do was done for a 120-foot roundabout. So now we need to go back, revise the design of the roundabout to a 60-foot roundabout. To do that, we need the additional money, which is we have within the construction budget that we can move to engineering to fund that design work.
No new funds, we're just
That-
moving.
that's
That's
correct,
correct,
yeah,
yeah,
that's-
it's not new money, it's just moving from one pot to another.
Is there a 60-foot roundabout in Cabarrus County?
No, ma'am. I think Wilmington, they gave us some examples of one in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'd have to pull, there were a couple others that they gave us some examples of. They are much
So how
smaller in nature.
functional-
They have what is considered a mountable center island. You can do it two ways, meaning you could draw a circle with lines and kind of delineate a center area without a raised mountable island, or you can do a mountable island, which essentially means a larger vehicle that comes through that would not traverse the radius of the roundabout. The island is designed for those wheels to kind of roll up on that island and still get through the roundabout.
So I think you're getting at one of the challenges that now has been put on them is both to, and engineers are working with, is to design this smaller roundabout that's also effective in handling that traffic.
Yeah.
And in some cases, we've talked about handling the traffic, the background traffic on Hickory Ridge that's passing the school. So that is part of the design work that needs to be done and we need to move forward with. Make sure that we not only are able to comply with what Harrisburg and NCDOT want, but what meets the needs of the schools.
And it will provide the function of what the roundabout should do and slow the traffic down. So in that regards, it's going to be advantageous for us, it'll be safer for us, as opposed to if we did just do a standard asymmetrical widening that would not slow the traffic down. So you will be slowing traffic down.
If I'm following you correctly, DOT has requested downscaling the
Yes, sir,
project.
that is correct.
You don't know yet what Harrisburg has to say about it.
Well, Harrisburg is on board as well. I mean, they're basically deferring to what NCDOT says at this point.
Right.
Harrisburg, I think, has relaxed some of their requirements on curb and gutter and sidewalks as well as a part of this, so.
So we've talked about the challenge with this is there are statutes that require reimbursement for these school improvements, these municipal and school-related improvements. That's the MSTA part of NCDOT. But there wasn't necessarily funding to back that up. More so with municipalities there is, although even they are scrambling to reimburse for these projects. NCDOT in particular did not have sufficient funding statewide to reimburse all these projects. So it's a balancing act of constructing what works and is safest for the school, safest for the community, and meeting those statutory requirements for reimbursement.
Okay. Any other questions?
Would this be appropriate time to ask for an update on Weddington Road? Since the new high school, we're T-minus 8 months.
So are we working through the same challenges? We are.
Well, the last that I
yes.
got was we were going to rebid in December, or I think it was either November or December.
Our
Did
current
that-
goal is to put a bid package out by the end of this month, in-house with Cabarrus County Schools with bidders, and hopefully let that job by the end of February, 1st of March. The design of that has not changed any. There have been some modifications from what we've been told from MSTA and congestion management, that a portion of that project that was originally a part of the approved TIA is now going to be pulled and not a requirement for us to perform, which is good because that'll be less money. So.
Okay.
But again, I think all of that is.
That's a tight schedule for August.
Yes.
So I guess the lesson is it doesn't matter how many years in advance or how far you anticipate this, you're still going to have the last minute.
Right.
And we have taken those lessons to heart. The scheduling with the new middle school that will be constructed will adjust for that.
Right.
Including getting all those, it has been a difficult moving approval process, I'll say that. Making sure those approvals are in place absolutely as early as possible.
Yeah, and I think I'm correct. When we moved the opening of this new high school a full year.
Yes, sir.
From what we originally talked about, and we're
the
still.
elementary school.
And the elementary school, yeah, both of them.
Still doing last minute things. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is from Department of Human Services, our Transportation Fiscal Year 20 rope application, and we are delighted to have Bob Bushy with us to talk about that.
Thank you and good evening. This is our annual Rural Operating Assistance Program grant from the state of North Carolina. This year, we're being allocated a total amount of $243,438.82. These funds are used for trips for rural general public, employment, and elderly and handicapped. There has been a slight change in the way they are running this program now. In the past, we were allocated a certain amount of the total money for each funding source. Now we can use it for any trips we want within that funding source, which is very helpful because if we are underspending in rural general public, but we're running out of money in elderly and handicapped, we can use that money, move it over and use it for those trips, so that will help a lot. This grant does not require a public hearing, it just requires acceptance from the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next up from Finance, installment financing contract for various school and county projects. And I think this is one that will require a public hearing at our regular meeting.
Yes. So sort of the next two items sort of go together, but I'll get you updated. So we will be conducting a public hearing. We called for it back in December, so it's time to do it at our January 21st meeting. And this is for our financing that we've been talking about for several months now. It's done a little bit different this time. It's for the loan, sort of like the loan program. Just to give you an update, we did submit our LGC application on Friday, so we're anticipating getting that approved on their February 4th meetings, the first Tuesday in February. And so as soon as we get that approval, then that will be the next thing on our processes to everything follows in place, and then we should have our installment financing done during February and be able to have access to those funds by the end of February. So that will be good towards our projects. And what will happen is each time that we spend money, I will be able to draw it down and get ourselves reimbursed. And we will only be paying for the interest on the money that we have spent and possibly on some little fee for the unspent proceeds. It depends on what kind of financing we're able to get. Sometimes some banks will come back and say they're not going to charge us for those unspent funds. Some banks do. So we don't know yet till it's priced. So that will be coming up. So for this first agenda item, it will be for the public hearing. Questions about the standard procedure? Okay. Going to the next one.
Keep
Okay.
going.
So the next item after we have our public hearing will be for you to adopt the resolution. It's for finally the final step in the resolution of the findings and to tell us to go ahead and do the debt. So it's our final stamp of approval to go forward with the debt. So just procedure. We have our bond attorney, Steve Cordell. He's drawn up all the documents that we're ready to do for our, extraction from our minutes that will be needed to put in our loan documents. So everything will be in place. And we're going up to $130 million. And that's what we anticipate spending the first 24 months. Actually, the last time I looked at our cash flow, right now it's about $124 million. But we always like to do a not to exceed because we will never take down money that we don't need. So that, if you remember, some of the projects that we're financing with this money will be the courthouse, middle school, the land purchase for the middle school, and land purchase for high school, the governmental center, the skylights and roof replacement. So all that will be included in this debt that we anticipate spending over the next 24 months. Any questions?
Any questions for Susan? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And next up, from Infrastructure and Asset Management, Cabarrus County Courthouse Expansion, Construction Manager at Risk Contract Extension. And I think, there's Kyle, hiding behind the post over there.
Good evening. Currently, Cabarrus County has a pre-construction contract with Messer Construction for the construction manager at risk services. On December 13th, 2019, Messer Construction bid out the scope of work for the site enabling portion of the project. Again, that is affectionately known as GMP1, and that will be enabling the current 1975 courthouse to continue to operate after we demolish the courthouse annex. So there's several steps in it, but in terms of publicly what you would see, it will be the demolition of the courthouse annex and that parking lot and the closing down of Meads. But actually the first parts of those process happen inside the 1975 courthouse. So how this works is they go out, they do this bid for GMP1, and then they turn in an Exhibit A of the existing contract that's in place, which is the AIA 133, and that becomes an addendum to the existing contract. So they did go out and they have produced that official GMP #1 to us, and the value of that GMP is $6,622,821. That is the GMP #1 total. That is within the range. It has been below the schematic GMP1 number that we presented to you on November 4th in this room. Now, one of the numbers that was taken out of their GMP was $102,000 of tap fees that can be paid directly to the city, and therefore we would not pay a management fee on those funds. So we did work with Messer and we did take that out. So again, I just want to throw that out there that we showed you a schematic design number of $6,722,116. Obviously, the GMP #1 from Messer came in below that, but there is $102,000 that is out there for tap fees. So we're right in line with what those numbers were. So this would, obviously, it's a standard AIA Exhibit A. There would be some review by the county attorney, but not much in terms of it's pretty much a standard contract, and it is what we're going to use and what's accepted. We did have, Messer is here in the room and they can answer any questions. They are coming back in February to present a logistics meeting, which is what we've been working on the backside of what is it physically going to look like, how is it going to affect the users. We have a lot of internal users of the current courthouse that are going to be affected drastically in their day-to-day operations by trying to build an elevator shaft in a building that operates as a courthouse. So that is going to be a pretty big challenge, and the Messer team will come up in February and provide a lot of those logistics, as you will get a lot of those questions, and also give you some ideas of what the exterior of the site will look like for the next year as we start to roll into GMP #2, which is the new building. So that'll be the project update that we'll give in February. I did want to mention that in GMP1, financially speaking, since one of the comments that came from the board was to local firms, financially speaking, 43.6% of that total GMP dollar-wise represents local contractors. I can answer specific questions.
Just one question, Kyle, and that is, what's the timetable for this? I mean, obviously, I didn't bring that up, but Kyle, can you tell us what the potential timetable is for this GMP1?
They want to start next Thursday. No, kidding. In February, we'll release them with a notice to proceed after the debt, after they go out for the debt. And then at that point, they're looking at the last week in February and the beginning of March of starting. But again, a lot of that is internally in the building, not things you would see from the street driving. I think what you're asking is, when are we going to really see some
dirt
stuff?
move.
Yeah,
Right.
I think you're going to see come July is when you'll really start to see things come down. There's been some discussion. We just had the meeting before this meeting with Turner. There might be some things that they can use the same contractor who's working on creating the elevator shaft to start to do some things on the exterior of the building that you might see. But in terms of big hole in the ground and demolition of the courthouse annex, you're looking at July and August.
All right, one last question, that is Means Avenue. When will that be closed?
What we have told the city and everybody else is we have been sticking with March and April that we're closing that. We have another meeting with the City of Concord utility departments, plural, next Monday, and that will help facilitate that. We're still working on some of the right-of-way in terms of the types of utilities that will come down and the effects of that.
Other questions? I really feel like we should ask Messer some sort of question since they've hung around throughout
Yeah.
the entire meeting, so they'll feel valued.
We feel valued.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
We're glad you're here and spent the time to at least sit in on the meeting, and we're looking forward to getting started. According to the Gantt schedule, you're going to mobilize February 24th, which I think is exactly what you just alluded to. So we'll look forward to getting that going, and can't wait to show up with a hard hat and a vest and go walk through the site. So I'm sure you'll love that.
You're welcome anytime.
Well, both Jason and perhaps Chris, but I know Jason will be up here, like I said, next month, kind of going through the logistics and laying that out so you guys we can have some of those, put those plans together for your visits to the site to walk through. Like I said, a lot of my time is spent dealing with the courthouse staff and how we're going to affect taking away restrooms and conference rooms and offices to build this new elevator shaft. It'll be a little bit of a challenge. So we'll spend that time, but a big thanks to both Messer and Silling. They worked very hard, and Messer had a lot of work to do to try to put these bid packages together in the time frame that we gave them, from when the prints got to them to basically put out these bid packages and get competitive bids. So these two guys and a whole team of folks that probably wouldn't be in a meeting like this have been working every single day trying to get that to narrow those bid gaps and narrow those contingencies that are in that.
Right. Additional questions? Well, I'm sure that is a challenging project for you, dealing with existing courthouse staff that's trying to do their jobs while all of this is going on, but I certainly want to say to you that as recently as this past weekend, I've had folks from the courthouse say extremely complimentary things about the way the process has worked and their level of appreciation for the collaboration that has occurred and their opportunity to provide input to the process. And it's all been very positive from every turn. So that's due in great part to your efforts. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
We heard the board loud and clear and tried to create that collaboration every step of the way. We still have a lot more of it to get all the way down to what type of chair does everybody get. So we've got a lot more to go.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll be hearing lots more. Okay, we move now to item 4.8 from Planning and Development, the 2021 Home Program. We're happy to have Kelly Sifford with us for this item and the next two as well.
I'll speak to you for a while. So, as you'll recall, a few months ago, I came to you with a project that Concord was interested in doing, the Market Street project that's right behind their town hall, with the apartments, and I guess it has some multi-use downstairs, but we now are to the point where we're starting to get to the point of commitment for the money for next year. So we will need to be holding a public hearing. There are going to be 17 units that will be income-based units. We will claim one of those 17 based on our money versus Concord's money. We'll be following suit with them, and it will be forgivable, assuming that they follow through with the 20 years. So it will be a 20-year commitment for their part. And we will be required to monitor them for 20 years, but we will work with Concord in doing that, just like we were working with Kannapolis on the other projects. So this is similar, just more of a mixed-use project than the other one. And we will need to hold a public hearing at your regular meeting in order to start that process.
Okay, questions for Kelly? I think this is another example of that collaboration that I was talking about on the last project, and I think it's going to benefit everybody.
Thanks to you all. Collaboration has gotten better with all the jurisdictions being able to work together on various projects. It's been great. Excellent.
Okay, move on to the next one.
Okay, so the next one is the amendments to the proposed fee schedule. So as you know, we had a rapid implementation there, and thanks to Matt Saunders with IT, he worked tirelessly to get this done. It was a very smooth transition. As we were implementing, we did discover a few small things. As you can remember, there was hundreds of pages there, so we did recognize a few small things that we missed. So I wanted to bring those to your attention and get those officially adopted. So they include the inspections for ABC, daycares, group homes, and foster care facilities. We did have a fee of $100 previously for that. It is very similar to the inspection we do for the certificate of occupancy with time and requirements. So we are proposing the same fee of $247.41 for that. Additionally, there's a form that Concord has us fill out for the certificate of completion for their jurisdiction so that they can hook up power. That did not carry over into our new ones. We were charging $20 before. We're essentially requesting to do the same thing on that. And the final thing that came up, as we were actually working on the fee study, it came to our attention through the state that we should have been charging the $10 homeowner recovery fee on all residential units, even apartment complexes. Basically anything that a general contractor pulls a permit for residentially, we should be issuing the $10 charge. So it wasn't shown in the fee study that way. It wasn't on the commercial, so it should have been. And additionally, we discovered that the way that it was shown on the chart and the way that it was working is that $10 fee was calculated into our fee. So when you put the multiplier on it, it was multiplying on that $10 fee. So what we are doing is pulling that out and adding it after the fact so that is not, the multiplier for us is not getting charged onto their $10 fee as well. So those are the changes that we have found thus far. Hopefully we won't find any more, but this is what we're requesting to go ahead and address this month.
Kelly, could you explain what a homeowner recovery fee is, please?
Certainly. General contractors, there's a homeowner recovery fee out there that the $10, $9 of the $10 goes to them. We get $1 for administration. That money, if a contractor does not do a good job, shall we say, on a project and a homeowner has problems, they can go to that fund, to that request from the homeowners, from the General Contractor Licensing Board. They can request funds to assist them to fix that problem, whatever it is. So it's just a protection for homeowners. It really, other than us collecting it, we don't really have anything to do with it other than if we discover that someone has a problem, we can refer them to that board for that discussion. Any questions on that? And Todd's here also if y'all have any questions on fees. Okay.
I think we're good.
Thanks. Okay, the final thing is the urgent repair grant. We have not applied for this for a number of years. We were not successful for a number of years. We did not attempt it for a while. We are proposing to attempt it again. I did discover after I submitted this that Kannapolis is also submitting for it, so we're cooperating with this. So $75,000 would probably be the max that I would propose that we apply for. As I understand it, the county can get $100,000 total, but I think Kannapolis, and we're working on it, but we're going to do some combination of approach. Of course, there's no guarantee that either of us were funded or that both of us could be funded at, a reduced rate. So we are working together on that. And there is no match with this. We're not shooting for the most that we could get for this round. We want to first see how it goes. And also, one of the challenges that we have had with this, and one of the reasons like we didn't apply last year, we looked at it, is that only 20% of your units can be mobile homes that are in mobile home parks that are not attached to the land. A good portion of our clients are in that situation. So last year it just didn't work for us. We think we might be able to work with it some this year, but I just want to kind of give you some background on some of the reasons we hadn't really heavily pursued this, but we would like to pursue it this year with your permission.
Well, give an example of a project that would apply for this. I know you have in the past.
Absolutely. So roofs, heating and air systems, they allow lead work in cases where there are children in the home that have elevated lead levels. You can do handicap accessibility. It is pretty limited in scope as far as who is eligible. The income is very low on it, and it has special groups, so it's focused very strongly on elderly, disabled, and veterans and children under 6 in the household. So it's a pretty tight group of who they're considering, and then outside of kind of a general list, we can go to them if there's something odd about that particular home and request from Housing Finance that we could do something else. But you can spend up to $10,000, $9,000 of that's hard cost, and $1,000 is kind of administrative cost per unit.
And you can tell from that eligibility list, a lot of these folks that would be eligible or are referred by our own DHS, veterans, other groups that are working with them. So,
Absolutely.
So Kelly gets a lot of referrals from our own departments on these.
Absolutely. Our Department of Human Services is our #1 referral point, and they are doing a great job looking at all needs of the clients that they have. So, yes, they would be them, other jurisdictions. We all are working very closely on this.
Okay, any other questions for Kelly? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to approval of the regular meeting agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. I think all of the public hearings that we've discussed are already included in that agenda. Does anyone see any other corrections or additions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. We do not have need of a closed session tonight, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.